that we got our system recordings put into place, now we're going to go over to the IVR section and or the auto attendant. So we can start our configuration with our auto attendant, program a couple of options that the caller will be able to select to reach different departments, different people, stuff along those lines. So the first thing I'm going to do is select applications and I'm going to select IVR. As you can see, we already have an IVR created. We're going to disregard that and we're going to create a new one. So I'm going to select add IVR. I'm going to name this day test, just like our system recording. Description, I'm going to leave that blank. Now, announcement. So this is where our system recording is going to come into play. Our system recording as of right now has no audio. So if somebody were to call in to this IVR, they would hear nothing. But the way we would record our system recording and or our auto attendant, we would enter the feature code, which was star 291 that we saw in the previous video. That way we have the system recording matching the options we are going to program now. So we're going to still select our system recording as day test. Enable direct dial. So what this setting does, and again, always use the question mark if you're curious what this means. So the question mark says provides options for callers to direct dial an extension. So what this does is, let's say the auto attendant says, thank you for calling. If you know your party's extension, you may enter it now. Then that caller will be able to dial, for instance, 201 and actually get through to that person. If this is disabled, they will actually not be able to get to that person. They're going to receive a message that says, that's an invalid option. Please try again. So that's what that does. We will ignore this setting just for now. The timeout setting. So this is the amount of seconds we want to give the caller to make a selection. So we don't want this set too high where if the caller forgot what option they need to press, weren't paying attention, something along those lines, we want something to happen quick enough where they don't just end the call. Usually what I set this to, I usually set this to about 7 seconds. I'll leave it at that. That's long enough for the caller to kind of get their bearings and remember what they're trying to do. If they don't know after 7 seconds, then they definitely need to hear the options again. Either the call needs to be ended or they need to route to somebody. So that I'll show you how you would choose those different options in a couple of settings from now. Alert info, will disregard that. Disregard ringer volume override. We'll disregard that. Invalid retries. So this is the amount of retries we want to give the caller if they mess up. For instance, if direct dial is disabled, which normally you're going to enable this, but again, that's a site-specific setting. Let's say that they do try to dial an extension and it's not possible due to direct dial being disabled. How many times do we want them to be able to retry an option? When they do make a mistake, they'll get a recording, and if you look right below here, invalid retry recording is set to default, which most of the time you wouldn't create a recording for that task. You would just let the system default one take that over. It will say, that is not a valid entry. Please try again. How many times do we want them to be able to do that? Depending on the configuration, maybe you don't want them to have any retries. Maybe you want them, if they mess up, they just go to the operator. I configure that quite a bit. But in this case, we'll leave it at 1. We'll give them one retry to press a valid option. So we'll leave that there. We already went over the retry recording. I'm going to ignore the this setting here, append announcement to invalid. We'll skip that. Again, question mark if you want to know what it does and if it applies to your configuration. Return on invalid. So this is something that you can definitely use. This is a good setting. And basically what this does is if somebody does hit the retry recording, do we want it just to return back to the IVR that it came from? So just say go back to, it says please try again. Hear the day recording again. Thank you for calling. If you know your party's extension, so on and so forth. Again, if that applies to your configuration, great. I'm going to leave it off for now, but that is a very good setting to have. Invalid recording. We already went through what this does, so we'll skip over that. Invalid destination. So if we don't want the call to return on invalid, we don't want it to just go back to the IVR that it came from. So in this case, the day. Let's say we did want it to ring in. This is where we would change this. So we would select the drop down here. And now you can see we have a ton of options of what we want the call to do uh, if the invalid retry is triggered. So that's why this phone system here is extremely customizable. You have a lot of options, a lot of things you can do, but we'll keep it simple, short and sweet in this case. So if somebody does hit the invalid destination, I'm going to just send them to our ring group that we just created. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to let that go to 501. So now, if the invalid, is triggered, they're just going to ring into the phone system and somebody can assist that caller. Timeout retries, basically the same thought process as the invalid, except it's if somebody just doesn't enter anything instead of misentering. This is just somebody sitting on the phone, not paying attention, just not pressing anything. So invalid or sorry, timeout retries. 3, in my opinion, is usually too many. I would probably leave this at 1. In some configuration situations, you might actually want to make your timeout retry 0. And a time this would come into play, let's say that your day recording says, if you know your party's extension, you may enter it now. To speak to a representative, please remain on the line. At that point, the person is not going to select anything because they want to remain on the line. At that point, you can set this to 0. And if you do have this specific configuration, the timeout recording, you don't want it to say you have timed out, and then it goes to ring somebody. That would make the call confusing. You actually would want this to be set to none. You want no recording to play. You just want them to be transferred off, and this is where the timeout destination would be set. So again, I'm going to set it to go to the operator ring group. I'm going to have it where they just speak to somebody. So as far as the caller is concerned, um, they just were transferred over. They heard a recording, they remained on the line, and they reached somebody. So that's how that would work if you had that configuration. But we'll leave it at that. Again, the options are endless on what you could do with that. I'm going to disregard this setting here. This is typically not used. So now, as you can see, where we have IVR entries, this is where you're going to enter the digits that somebody could push to go to a different department. So let's say 1 was for sales and you created a sales ring group. What you would do, let's use the operator just as an example because it's really the only ring group we have at the moment. If you had 10 ring groups, you could, add a bunch of different options, but we'll just do this. So we'll do 0 for the operator. The destination is going to go to ring groups in the operator. So now if they press 0, it's going to go ring that operator ring group. So it works out well. So let's say we have another option that says to leave a voicemail, press 1. To do that, we'll enter 1. Now we would select voicemail and then the mailbox we wanted it to go to. So in this case, I'm going to use 201, unavailable message. And now we have a fully functional auto attendant at this point after we do our system recording. Again, our system recording does not have anything recorded until we call in to the system and record it to match our options. So just remember that. If you hear nothing when you call in, it means that system recording has not been recorded. So now we'll hit submit. And at that point, I'm going to hit apply config because I'm done in this section.